issues. Yes, it's time for emerging issues, B, and this one we are going to go through Compose Yourselves, episode number 10 this year, mate, and we're having a little bit of a look at the major buy-round period because I know we've still got about a month to go, but we are closer to round 12 than we are round 1.
100%, and now's the time you actually probably is the best time to start preparing. Remembering that we only have 3 trades each week. Last year we got the 4 trades for the major buy round, the first one, but it all happens a little bit earlier this year, so it's very good to be prepared now.
Yeah, that's a really good spot from you there in relation to them not adapting the rules from last year and moving it forward to the start of the major buy-round period. So something for coaches to be aware of there, just those 15 trades used between now and round 12. Of course, in round 12, we're going to have 7 teams on the bye. We'll have the Cowboys, Dragons, Tigers, Broncos, Titans, Rabbitohs, and Storm unavailable. And then we'll also have the Origin players unavailable as they'll be in Origin camp. But we do only need a starting 13, but this year it looks like some positions might be a little bit more difficult to fill than others in round 12.
Yeah, it's getting a little bit trickier, isn't it? And this is where it's always good to have your I guess like a balanced squad is the easiest way to put it, where you've got all those positions. Because at the end of the day, we don't know who the Origin team's going to be. There could be smokies like a Terrell May in round 18, who you were banking on, or Corey Horsburgh, who you were banking on in round 12. So it's always good to have those little contingency plans as well, just in case your guy gets called up.
Yeah, that's right. And you mentioned there in the middle forward position, it's going to be a bit tricky, and that's what we covered in the last edition of Emerging Issues, where sort of went through those big 3 there. I think with a half centre winger fullback though, mate, I think they might be slightly easier just because a lot of dual position players will be half winger fullback or winger fullback centre dual.
Yeah, but it is going to be still a little bit trickier as well. The duels are going to help, like the Tamales and the Garricks and also your Roosters guys. But, the popular guys like your Ponga and your Tedesco, every chance to go to Origin, where you may have been relying on them to be a green dot for you in round 12.
Yeah, it's going to be really, really interesting to see how that plays out. But we're going to do a bit of an exercise in this one, just to sort of guide some of the coaches that not too sure where to start their round 12 planning out. And doing what I prefer to do when it comes to major buy-round planning and just identifying your red dots and examining the ones that you actually want to hold on to and the ones that you're looking to trade out over the coming weeks. So, as we mentioned before, you only need a starting 13, so it gives you a maximum of 8 red dots for that round. Origin players are out, and then we've got the fantasy relevant players from the 7 teams on the bye. So, let's actually have a look at our teams. So, I've got mine here on the screen. So, for the benefit of those listening on the podcast, I've identified the following players as potential round 12 red dots. So, Nathan Cleary, I think, is a certainty for Origin, as is Isaiah Yeo and Payne Haas. Terrell May has the bye, as well as Stafford Toa. I think May goes to Origin anyway. Mamazelis is on the bye for South Sydney at the Dragons. We've got Toby Couchman and Dylan Egan on the bye. And then my 2 Origin question marks are James Tedesco at the Roosters, who do play that week, and Corey Horsburgh at the Raiders, who also do play that week. Now, B, currently on that list is 10. Potentially 2 of these guys might not play Origin, but it's clear to see that I'm going to have to probably at least move 2 or 3 of these guys on before we get to round 12.
Yeah, that's it. How many have you got there? You got 10. So you're probably going to have to move 2 of them on. I think Stafford Toa is going to be a pretty big sell. I've been waiting for him to top out because he's been scoring 1 try a game. And now I think we all had him from 250. So take your 260 odd grand that he's made and run, and then start buying someone who is going to fill a position of need for you. I think your first 3 are definitely go to Origin. Not sure about Terrell May. He's done everything to ever warrant it, but watching the Channel 9 coverage of who they think, like Brad Fittler and Andrew Johns was selecting, Terrell May didn't feature. And then, Toby Couchman's going to be a hold because he's the GOAT. Dylan Egan's going to be a hold. Mamazulis, as long as you've got a hooker to cover, like a Tom Starling or a Riley Smith or Aaron Clark. So I think you're going to be fine there as well. And then, you're running the gauntlet with Tedesco and Horsburgh because they could get picked. They might not get picked. We won't know until round 12, but I think you need to be proactive and then have a plan in case those guys with the question marks do end up getting the call up.
Yeah, I think you nailed it on the head there, mate. In terms of Toa, he's going to have to go. He's probably not going to be a keeper centre. There's heaps of edges that are going to be available to play in centre, like your Fermals, your Lucases, Garrick's dual position. And then obviously there's even the elite guys like Herbie Farnworth. Now, let's head to yours, mate. What are your potential round 12 red dots as of your current team?
So I've got more than you, but I do have plans on getting rid of a couple of these guys. So I've got Cleary, Haas, and May, similar. Stafford Toa, who's going next week. I've been pretty adamant that I wanted to sell him pretty quickly. Mamazoulis, who I still think is a hold for the entire year. Toby Couchman, who I've named my team after him now because he's my love interest for the year. Dylan Egan, everyone's going to hold because he's got potential to make another 300 grand. Hubner's on the chopping block as well this week. And then Ponga, Tedesco, and Horsburgh.
Yeah, perfect. So you mentioned there, obviously, Toa's probably going to head soon. Mamazelis, you're going to hold. And then Hubner, now he's going to be interesting because relatively high ownership. He's going to have made 180k this week. Is he one that you're going to be a little bit more aggressive on because he's missing round 12 anyway? Or is it just more the fact that his rolling average is now going to have a 20 score in it?
It's actually neither. The reason I'm getting rid of him is because I don't have him in my plans for how many mids I want to run. To me, mid is the highest scoring and the most valuable position this year. So I want to stack my team with gun mids. So we'll get into the trades a little bit later, but I'm going to be cashing down Stafford Toa for someone and then upgrading Lachlan Hubner to another mid who I want to have for the rest of the year.
That's fantastic. Now, before we leave this, obviously, Kalen Ponga is already in your team, and we know Reece Walsh has got hurt, likely to miss game one, so you think Ponga is a shoe in there at fullback. If you're a non Ponga owner like myself, is he a player that you would just steer clear of now, regardless of the price, because he misses Origin? Or do you think you potentially move on some of the other round 12 red dots to try and slot Ponga in at a discount price?
I think with how Ponga's playing right now, you can't bring him in. I started with him, so I'm not too fussed. And in my buy planning, I've actually got him going to Origin. I've had him going there for the last couple of weeks because I wasn't impressed with Reece Walsh at all. So I figured Ponga was going to get that call up anyway. So um, yeah, he's going to be cheap, and there's going to be a time where you can't ignore him. But if he's also going to Origin, then he's going to be out for all three major buys. He's not going to be that helpful for you. Go
Yeah,
someone like a Jacob Carraz.
yeah. Do we think he's playing Origin though? Because great right winger, no low max, and Bulldogs at the top of the ladder.
So from the reports I heard, they just said Lomax would only need one game to prove fitness, and they'd want him back in the team. So if Lomax comes back round 11, I think he's due back round 12, which is Origin. But if he came back round 11, then I think Carraz misses out. But I do think he's first up to go in that spot because they want to have specialist wingers there.
That's fair. Now, with that, if Lomax needs that game, would you be concerned about trading in a Carraz just because we know that if, say, Lomax has a setback, like an infection or something that knocks him back a week, we basically assume Carraz is going to come in?
Depending on when you're bringing him in. If you're going to bring him in next week, that means you're going to get 3 to 4 scores out of him. And he could very well end up making you money. And then all of a sudden it's like, okay, well, I took the punt. It's just like everyone who was trading out Jaden Campbell. I took the punt on James Tedesco. He's every chance of getting picked for Origin. But it's like, is he going to benefit you in the short term? And, I'd rather risk a Jacob Carraz than like a Scott Drinkwater or someone like that. Let's just say that.
Yeah, that's good analysis and really interesting, and which leads us into talking around the Origin players. Now, we know from previous seasons when we've got major buy-in period, is it a little bit easier to hold guys that have major buys where their team has a buy anyway? So the Broncos, Storm, Tigers, Titans, Eels, Panthers, and Wires, they missed 2 of the major buy-ins. So if you have an Origin player, they only miss an extra 1, so it's not too bad. But the fact that the minor buy rounds made only require 13, it means we can probably hold on to 3 or 4 Origin plays. Do you think that that is something that you're going to look to do this year?
Uh, I'm looking at holding all my Origin guns. So May, Haas, Cleary, potentially May, sorry. Who did I say? So May, Haas, Cleary, Ponga, potentially Tedesco if he gets picked. But apart from that, actually, my team's not really made up that much of Origin guns. Like I've got no Isaiah Yo, anyone like that. So the Origin contingent is actually not going to affect my team too much. But again, the guys like, we talk about the captaincy options of being the 3 big guns. And if they're all at Origin, why would you get rid of them? Like they're your big guns.
Yes, and as I covered in last edition of Emerging Issues, it's going to be an awful lot easier to hold them, assuming they back up once or twice in 13, 16, and 19 anyway. So, in terms of holding on to Origin players, we want that 13.5 plus million team value. I think most coaches are going to get there with the way the cash is flowing. We're on dual position, so we can move things around. Again, guys only miss one or two minor buys. We'll speak about those in a second and find some cash outs. But I do want to talk about the Panthers specifically because their buy schedule is quite interesting. Yes, they miss 15 and 18, so that's good for your Origin guys. But they also miss round 11. So it means between round 11 when they play the Cowboys and game one of Origin, they have 17 days in that from that round 10 to that Origin game. It does mean that they're a good chance to back up. But if you're an Isaiah Yeo and like myself and a lot of coaches are, do you think that missing 2 rounds and he's probably going to be that 850k or thereabouts unless he has a really, really bad score? Do you think it's worth moving him at 11 knowing the fact that he's going to miss the best part of 4 of the next 9 and will need to back up to maybe even make that 4 out of 9?
So I'd probably put a bit of a different spin on it, and then let's say Yo went down with an ankle injury, and the diagnosis was 2 weeks. Like, don't think about the Origin period. Just it's an ankle injury. It's 2 weeks. Or Nathan Cleary, it's 2 weeks. Are you holding?
Oh, for me, I would, yeah, definitely. In that
So,
way, it's 2 weeks for sure.
So that's where I think what that gap is, and again, you've nailed it on the head with the bye period. And I know you've brought this up through the entire season of exactly Penrith, where it's going to be better for Isaiah Yo. He's probably not going to play as many minutes, although I think he'll be the starting 13 with Cam Murray out. And he might play a few extra minutes, but they're so good, and especially with how the Panthers season is going right now, they're not on top of the ladder, they're not flying, they need to get wins. So with your Panthers guys, I would 100% hold.
Yeah, I think it's one where, like, if they don't back up in 13, you can sell. I think some coaches might decide to sell Yo if they own Cleary as well, and I'll be curious to get your thoughts on this, is they look at it and go, well, I can sell Yo to Max King, right? Like, we're going to talk plenty of Max King over the next few weeks, and we already have on Talking League. I can get Max King in. He misses only 13, 16 when my Origin guys are playing in the mids anyway, so I don't really need him. Do you think in that scenario where if a coach thinks that they can use that money more efficiently, that they might move, say, a Yo on just because they want to differentiate from, say, maybe 20, 25% of coaches hold on to him?
Yeah, look, there is a world. And at the end of the day, it's going to be up to your squad balance and your team value. As it stands, like with me right now, I don't own Yo, so that's something I haven't really given too much thought of. But I also think that if you started with him, he's a gun that you picked up for a reason. I'd probably sell Haas over Yo. Just because I know historically with Payne Haas, his minutes get reduced a little bit in that Origin period because he's doing a bit of a different role.
Yeah, and that's funny enough was where I was leading to earlier in the season. I'm just looking at this round 11, 12 and going, I could get King in. So it will be a really interesting point of differentiation as we go through the season. But, mate, let's go to those potential Origin selections. So many players in the frame. So Tedesco, Horsburgh, and Matt Burton, who we've got on the screen here, and for those listening, a lot of these guys, their fantasy relevance either goes in the toilet if they play Origin and miss these rounds, or they're going to be awesome if they miss Origin. With these coaches, I think I might know where you're leading, but are you happy for coaches to be aggressive at this point, knowing there's still 3 or 4 rounds of good scores for most of these guys?
I think if it's improving your squad, it's sometimes going to be a risk you're going to have to take. Like, I took the risk on James Tedesco this week, knowing very well he could play Origin. Horsburgh, a lot of us have had it from round 1, and he's still making money for everyone. So he was a good choice. And Matt Burton's a depreciating asset. So, and also remembering with Matt Burton, I don't think he'll make the Origin squad, but I think he'll be 18th man, which means that he would be in camp and not playing for the Dogs.
Yeah.
So just be careful on Matt Burton.
Yeah. Did buy into any of the drama from last year where the Bulldogs were very, very unhappy with the way that they were treated with Matt Burton being the 18th man and not having him play? Do you think potentially that New South Wales might go, all right, well, if your team's going to jump up and down about you being 18th, we'll pick someone else?
No, I don't think they'll care at all. I think they're just going to pick the best squad for what they have to do, and then if the clubs just have to deal with it, like that's what the representative game is. So I don't think that'll play into the hands of anything that way.
Yeah, no, I think that's really good analysis, particularly from someone who's in that Bulldogs arena, for lack of a better phrase. Moving into the players to target, one of these guys is a Bulldog, and Max King and Ruben Garrett got on the screen here. Obviously, you want to look at your own personal team composition and identify where your positions of need are. But it ties into something that I think we mentioned last year on the Fantasy Game Plan. You and I and the rest of the Talking League team and other content creators might go out and say, this player, they're going to be awesome for the major buy-in period. But that might be awesome for the person who's saying that, but for the listener out there, that particular player might not actually be good for your particular team composition.
100%. Like, I mean, Max King, he's he's going to be so popular with obviously the score he's pumped out. But you could already have too many mids in round 12, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, well, I'm actually going to have extras. Like, let's say you're running a Horsburgh, who else? Hopgood, Aaron Clark, and then you've also got Max King. I mean, Aaron Clark can go to hooker, but you might run into Tom Starling. So all of a sudden, you've got a surplus of players that you can't actually play because you can only play one in your starting 13. So, Max King might not be your play, but you might be short on the wing fullback. So it's going to be a Ruben Garrick or a Tom Trebojevic when he comes back. It all depends on your team composition.
Yeah, it certainly does. And you're really, really good point there around excess mids. We want to avoid oversubscription where possible. One or two extras isn't the end of the world, but if we're wasting them there, then potentially we could be just cutting ourselves short in other rounds. I think, of course, we want to keep an eye on cash downs and cut price keepers as and when they come up, and that's the Matt Burtons of the world. And then, mate, we're going to cover this in the next edition of Emerging Issues, but the minor buy rounds. Now, it's the change of strategy, and we're going to really go into it in a few days' time. These guys like Max King, Ruben Garrick, Jacob Preston that miss 2 minor buy rounds, they are going to be fantasy gold dust if you have Origin guys. Now, obviously, we'll just quickly go through Max King in the sense that he misses 13 and 16 run. So if you hold on to, let's just pretend you've got Haas and May in your team, which a lot of coaches would have. Max King missing that round when you only need 3 mids might not hurt you because you'll have Haas and May back up. And let's just say you've got Aaron Clark in your team and you've got Mamazella, so you push him down to the mids. Max King missing in 13-16 if your Origin guy is available actually doesn't hurt you. In fact, you want him missing and being a red dot in those rounds because you don't need his score.
Yeah, 100%. And I think for round 13, you're spot on the money. But we're doing a specific player here right now. But you've also got to make sure you chuck in a spreadsheet or something because round 16 is going to be super difficult in that position. Being with you're going to have the Dragons guys being Couchman and Egan out, as well as your Preston and your Max King. So again, this is where DPP comes in important. Like in my spreadsheet, I've got Kidiani Katoga as my edge number 2 with Hopgood as 1. That's who I'm running on edges. And then the hopes that May, Haas, and Horsburgh, they're all picked, end up getting backing up.
Yeah, and that's a really good point. You don't want to have too many of these types of plays. Yeah, they can be helpful for the majors, but you do too much there. Those minors can be difficult, and of course, quality, not quantity, is something that we are stressed about when it comes to players in your buy round coverage. But let's roll into our takeaways. So obviously, we don't want to rush out buy planning B. There's plenty of injuries. We saw heaps of them these weeks. And at this point, let's think of the Origin players that we want to hold on to. But keeping in mind, so much can change between now and round 12.
Exactly right. And at the end of the day, just, make educated decisions on what is going to compose the best team for you. But at the same token, the Origin part to me is just like, if they're fringe Origin, I still think it's worth a punt. But if they're people like, you wouldn't be bringing in Isaiah Yeo right now because he's going to Origin. So just, again, have fun with the picks as well that you make. Like, I'd love to have Jacob Carraz right now. And nothing would stop me from buying him if that's the position that I was chasing.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And looking for those market opportunities as a player that's underpriced or add value and you've got some spare cash, go ahead and buy them. That quality over quantity. We don't want 13 300k players in any of these rounds. We want to balance it out with some good guns, holding on to some cash in our Origin players aren't available, and then getting a couple of cheap guys in there. But that wraps up this edition of Emerging Issues. Thank you for those viewing on YouTube. Be sure to like and subscribe. And if you like to listen to the entire podcast, head to the Talking League podcast feed on your preferred platform.